From the gas pump to the grocery store to the housing market, prices are pinching the budgets of North Carolinians. From the war in Ukraine to the lingering effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, the unknown is unsettling to North Carolinians. Known as Richard Burr is stepping down after serving more than 17 years in the U.S. Senate. His replacement is up to you in Decision 2022.
Hello, and thanks for joining us for this election special coverage. I'm Lena Tillett. 14 Republicans want to replace Senator Richard Burr. However, polling shows 3 candidates have separated themselves from the pack. We invited all 3. Early frontrunner Congressman Ted Budd did not accept our invitation to take part in tonight's debate and has not participated in any other debates for this race. So let's meet the 2 candidates who are here, Pat McCrory and Mark Walker.
Pat McCrory served 14 years as the mayor of Charlotte. He served 1 term as governor of North Carolina starting in 2013, becoming the state's first Republican governor in 2 decades. Since leaving office, he hosted a successful radio talk show before deciding his passion was in public office. Mark Walker has been a pastor for 16 years. He served 3 terms in Congress, representing North Carolina's 6th congressional district. Walker decided not to run for re-election in 2020 and then set his sights on the vacancy created by the retirement of Senator Richard Burr.
We have a lot to discuss tonight. Time is tight, so our goal is to keep this moving to cover as much ground as possible. And after an old-fashioned draw of straws, our first question will begin with Congressman Walker. Thank you both again for joining us tonight. Congressman Walker, by one key measure, inflation has grown at the highest rate in more than 4 decades. North Carolinians, of course, are feeling it at the grocery store, at restaurants, in retail. What would you do specifically as a senator to help bring costs down?
Sure. Thank you to WRAL. Ms. Tillett, thank you for hosting this. I think it's very important that we look at the spending levels that we're seeing out of the federal government. I think it was Milton Friedman that talked about inflation is taxation without representation. We're looking at all-time high. In fact, just 2 days ago, the numbers came out at 8.5%, 8.5%. Under the last administration, President Trump, the highest was about 1.7%. This is cataclysmic for many families at home that are trying to work through difficult times. The gas prices, the inflation, the grocery store costs. These are real kitchen table issues. I'm the last member in the United States Congress, Republican or Democrat, to get a balanced budget amendment to the floor, to the House floor, for a vote. Republicans like to talk about fiscal responsibility, but only a few will step up to the pump. Until we get our spending under control, we're not going to get a handle on inflation. And it's time that the people in North Carolina look forward to sending somebody to the U.S. Congress that will stand up and will push back against the exorbitant spending bills. That's why I never got chosen for the Ways and Means Committee. Every single time the omnibus or the spending bills were up, frivolous pork barrel spending, Mark Walker, in my 6 years of U.S. Congress, we always voted no. That's why we've got to get it under control now.
Governor McCrory?
Well, the first 2 things I would do is unleash America's energy resources, and the second thing I would do is quit giving free money away. Both things I did as governor of North Carolina. But I need to say, these are extremely serious times, not only with the inflation, which is bankrupting the middle class and starving the poor, but it's also very serious times internationally. And at this point in time, I see President Zelensky, who's giving press conferences while his nation is being bombed, and yet our main opponent here, he refuses to show. Congressman Budd refuses to come. He doesn't have the courage to come and debate, while others across the world have the courage to fight for freedom. And that is totally unacceptable to the North Carolina voters. And I want to say this today, right to you, if a candidate doesn't come to a debate, which he's refused every single debate, he doesn't care about you. He doesn't care about North Carolina, and he doesn't care for freedom and democracy, which the people of Ukraine are fighting for right now.
With respect, sir, can you answer the question? What would you do?
The 2 points I would do would unleash America's energy resources. When I was governor, I actually approved a pipeline coming in from West Virginia to help the people of Eastern North Carolina have natural gas, especially the agricultural community. And President Biden needs to unleash American resources. That's the greatest strength we've had for the last 25 years to fight inflation. And second, we need to quit giving away free money. And as your governor, what I did was reduce unemployment compensation, quit giving away free money, and get people back to work. And as a result of my strong leadership as governor, we had the largest drop in unemployment in North Carolina history. We had the largest drop in the United States of America due to making strong decisions. And now we need strong decisions instead of weak people who are in the U.S. Senate.
Time for another question. Same topic, though, of the economy, beginning with you, Governor McCrory. The economy is also seeing record job growth right now with very low unemployment. Employers, though, continue to tell us that they're having a hard time filling jobs. How would you address this? And what role, if any, could immigration play in filling these jobs?
Well, I would do exactly what I did as governor. And what employers back in 2013, when North Carolina had the fourth highest unemployment rate in the country, when I just became governor, I had employers come and tell me, Pat, you're giving more money than we pay in compensation. We had one of the highest compensations for unemployment in the United States of America. And plus, your requirements for looking for jobs were very weak. I changed that. I reduced the unemployment compensation, and the liberals went nuts. And 3 months later, we had the largest drop in unemployment. One of the things that got me into this race was when the federal government started paying people more not to work than to work. And that's called socialism. That's growing the nanny state. In fact, Ted Budd recommended that we actually pay people from unemployment to go back to work. That's not government's responsibility. It's the individual's responsibility to take jobs that are available and produce for America. That's our greatest strength.
Congressman Walker.
Yes, thank you. I think it's very important to understand the overall concept here. The left, for many years, through both our education system and other means, has tried to create a dependency on the federal government. This is a problematic because what happens, it literally stifles the growth of an individual. As a former pastor, I sometimes work in scripture references. Psalms 139 says we are fearfully and wonderfully made. You know what that means? That means all of us have a certain giftedness or a certain skill set. So when the federal government came in and said, look, we're going to pay you up to $900 to stay at home, Senator Tim Scott, who's endorsed our campaign for the U.S. Senate, was the first to call this out, who basically said this is going to create major problems for small businesses. I've traveled somewhere between 60 to 70,000 miles across this state in the last year. The number one concern that I hear among small businesses is they no longer can find the help. $12, $13, $14, $15, sometimes as high as $16, $17 an hour. We have hurt the people. We have hurt these small businesses. And until we get the government out of the small business arena, we're going to continue this suffering. Listen, 2/3, 67% of all jobs in North Carolina are coming from small businesses. Why aren't we wanting to do everything that we can to be able to promote, to be able to incentivize the small businesses as opposed to pass legislation where it's at the federal level or the state level that literally does damage to these small business owners? We've got to get back and help these small businesses in any way that we can.
To address the question, though, could immigration play a role in this?
Could immigration play a role of it? Well, listen, I'm for anybody. America, we celebrate the fact that we take in more legal immigrants than any country that's ever existed in the world, right? We take in about 1 million legal immigrants that come in, that raise their right hand, that become as much American, Ms. Till, as you and I do. And we're happy for that. We like to see those folks into the workforce. But if you're talking about waving the magic wand of amnesty for illegal immigrants, between 18 and 50, the number one cause right now of death among males is some of the illicit drugs, the fentanyl that's coming in, the amount of human trafficking, sex trafficking. This administration knows. I was the ranking member on intelligence and counterterrorism. This administration knows, on the subcommittee for Homeland Security, sees the sex trafficking that's coming in from these migrant families. And for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to look the other way when they know what's happening to the very children of these migrant families is an abomination. It's a shame. I won't stand for it. I fought for it, against it for 6 years in the Congress, and I'll continue to do so as the next U.S. Senator from North Carolina.
Yeah.
If I can add to what Mark says, well, first of all, regarding immigration, legal immigration can help us. Illegal immigration only puts more more pressure on our hospitals, on our schools, and our criminal justice system. And as governor and as a mayor, I saw the amount of cartels that are along I-95, I-85, I-26, I-40 that are bringing these drugs, bringing in human trafficking, young children to be trafficked. We cannot allow that whatsoever. And that's why, as governor, I signed a bill to outlaw sanctuary cities in North Carolina. And another thing, I was with a trucker last night in Belmont, North Carolina, and one of the issues with the young small businesses, as Mark says, agree with you 100% on this. A small trucker said, Governor, my diesel gas has gone up 60%. How am I supposed to transfer this cost to my customer when my customer says no? Joe Biden and Kamala Harris' energy plan, again, is going to bankrupt small businesses and bankrupt the middle class. We have to unleash our energy resources in America and not depend upon Russia, not depend upon Saudi Arabia, not depend upon Venezuela or Nigeria. That's not only going to hurt the families and cause further inflation, but it's going to put us into a war.
Let's move on now away from the economy and to another source of the rising gas prices, to a topic that, frankly, the globe is watching right now. The Russian assault on Ukraine has the world on edge. In fact, a WRAL news poll found most voters are concerned the invasion could lead to World War III. How would you evaluate the U.S. response to this point, and what should we do now? Congressman Walker.
I'm the only candidate in this race that has the level of foreign policy experience that's needed to be able to talk about these things. In fact, I have been in 6 different Eastern European countries. I've sat down with parliaments and prime ministers. And it's interesting, they told me all the same 2 things. Number 1, Putin is evil to the core. He's about world dominance. And number 2, he will only act when he smells weakness. And I think that's what we're seeing. A crazy madman who deserves no accolades, no accommodations. We've got to make sure that we're providing President Zelensky every bit of lethal aid that we can provide to shut down this madman. I was on a phone call 2 weeks ago with a missionary that was literally describing the atrocities that are happening, churches being bombed with families and children in these churches that thought would be a safe haven. This is a travesty, and it deserves no accolades, and that's why we've got to do. Now listen, I'm not going to go as far as saying that we need to put American soldiers, men and women, boots on the ground, but we can still provide every bit of lethal aid that's needed to combat the enemy of Putin and anybody that presents to be his ally.
Governor McCrory.
Well, first of all, I've been to Poland and met with the leaders of Poland, and of course Poland is the site of some of the worst atrocities since mankind during World War II, by both Germany and Hitler and by Stalin, especially if you look at Warsaw, by Stalin, where they just looked and observed and waited for the people of Warsaw to be slaughtered. Putin is a Stalinist. Putin is a Stalinist, and I'm a Ronald Reagan conservative who believed when he said Russia is the evil empire. And sadly, our current president and past presidents began to trust Putin. And even President Biden said, we'll accept a slight incursion. Words make a difference when you're a sitting president. Words make a difference when you're a sitting U.S. congressman. And Congressman Ted Budd said that Putin is an intelligent actor. He also said he was evil, to be fair, but he's not an intelligent actor. An intelligent person doesn't bomb hospitals. He also said, we understand why he invaded Ukraine to protect the flank. No, we don't understand that at all. And for a sitting congressman to say that, yes, it's reckless. Both Biden and Budd have been reckless in their comments. We've got to show strength. President Biden has been saying what he isn't going to do as opposed to what he is going to do to Putin.
We do want to say for the record, you mentioned he did also call Putin evil, but he also called him a thug and said he didn't agree. I'm talking about Congressman Budd here. He did not agree with this invasion in Ukraine.
You don't call your enemy an intelligent actor.
Let me weigh in on that.
There's no definition of intelligence, and you put Putin next to it. He is not intelligent. He is dangerous.
Just equal time here. The reason, in my experience working on Homeland Security as the ranking member for intelligence and counterterrorism, here's why you don't do that. when a member of Congress says anything flattering or complimentary, what happens is it's taken and used as propaganda against some of the people that are our own allies. It's not very bright. Plus, members of Congress are warned not to do it. So for Mr. Budd to do that, it shows an ineptness that he's not ready to serve.
Quickly, though, neither of you answered the question of what should we do now? What should be done now?
I said exactly what we should do now. We should provide every bit of lethal aid. In fact, I mentioned it twice to make sure that we're providing the aid that's necessary.
I agree with him 100%. We ought to provide NATO together, not just the United States, but NATO as one unit ought to provide as much aid as the courageous President Zelensky is requiring. If Russia takes Ukraine, then what happens to the other bordering countries from Poland to all the other countries along? It puts the world at tremendous danger. Estonia, I mean, those people are scared right now, and you're right, this can become a very serious issue. And Congressman Ted Budd not only didn't show up here tonight, he didn't show up to vote against the sanctions toward Russia.
I do want to move on, and I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the thousands of service members from North Carolina who are currently in Eastern Europe. They certainly are in our thoughts and prayers.
That's a great point.
All right, moving forward now to the politics of this race, beginning with you, Governor McCrory. Your opponent, Ted Budd, who you have mentioned many times now during this debate, has been endorsed by President Trump. Given that the former president won North Carolina 2 times, how difficult is it for one of you now to win this race, beginning with you, Governor McCrory?
Well, first of all, I don't ride on the backs of other people or the records of other people. I run on my own record of accomplishment and success as a mayor and a governor. As both governor and mayor, I fulfilled my promises. Isn't it about time we actually have a politician elected who fulfilled their promises, who was more worried about the next generation than the next election? So I haven't asked for any endorsements of anyone because I talk about my own record, and plus I'm not owned by anyone. And sadly, Congressman Budd is owned by a special interest group out of D.C. that's pro-China, anti-farmer, very much anti-farmer, against all farm subsidies in North Carolina, which Ted Budd voted against outside of everyone else. So I run on my own record of success. Would you have rejected
President Trump's endorsement?
What's that?
Would you have rejected President Trump's endorsement?
I haven't asked for anyone's endorsement, nor will I, because that makes me dependent upon other people. We need independent senators now more than ever who have the maturity, experience, and accomplishment to make the tough decisions in these very serious times.
Congressman Walker, would it be more difficult for one of you to win this race?
Look, I'm a transparent guy. Absolutely, when you have the past Republican sitting president endorses somebody else, that makes it a little bit more difficult. I'm not going to pretend that it doesn't. But there's a reason that tonight that Mr. Budd didn't show up. There's a reason. Like, did you know that I'm actually rated the #1 America First pro-Trump policy candidate, not Mr. Budd? I'm the highest rated conservative ever to serve in the GOP leadership. But let me tell you why Mr. Budd didn't show up tonight. He voted against farmers. When President Trump, Ron DeSantis, and Kristi Noem and I tweaked that farm bill as conservative as we can, it's only reauthorized every 5 years. I wasn't going to walk away on the farmers, but the DC super PAC, this dark money that has put $14 million, they called me. I was there. They called Mr. Budd. They told me vote against it. I said, I'm not voting against it. I'm working for our farmers. They called Mr. Budd. You know what he had to do? He had to vote against it. Not only that, but the other reason that he won't show up for the debate tonight, I led the entire U.S. House repealing the Obamacare mandates and defunding Planned Parenthood. You know who blocked it? Mark Meadows and Ted Budd. In fact, I remember getting a call from President Trump at that time, who was livid with Mark Meadows and a handful of his followers there, and said this: these guys are crazy. They gave us Obamacare and Planned Parenthood for another year. Frankly, it looks like they gave it to us for a lifetime. These are the questions that Mr. Budd cannot answer, he cannot face, and ultimately the most important thing, Ms. Tillett, is that he can't name a single thing, a single achievement, a single accomplishment, a single thing he's led. I can give you a list an arm long of things that I was able to do. In my freshman year, I became the first ever member.
We don't have the time for that arm's length list of your accomplishments, but I will say, I want to remind our viewers that we did invite Congressman Ted Budd to be here tonight. He did not accept that invitation.
Let me say on record, he will never show up. I'm on this for, there's 5 debates. He hasn't shown up for the first 2. He won't show up tonight. And I'll predict this right now, he will not show up for the final two either. You know why?
We'll see.
Because they won't allow him.
Governor McCrory, President Trump referred to you during this weekend's rally as the bathroom governor, tied to HB2, which of course prohibited transgender people from using bathrooms or locker rooms based on their gender identity.
Let me correct you, that was only in government facilities like a highway rest stop or in our schools. It wasn't in the private sector, and that was one of the things that was misknown by the media. I actually think the private sector can do anything.
You signed and defended this bill, even when there was immense economic fallout. Do you regret that?
Actually, the economic fallout didn't occur to the bill. The economic fallout occurred to the cancel culture. Andrew Cuomo was the one who led the boycott of North Carolina. It was the Democratic Governors Association. How ironic, Andrew Cuomo led the boycott of North Carolina, and since then he's been kicked out of office. Listen, we cannot allow discrimination against anyone, but we also can't allow science to be taken over by woke politics. And we need a serious conversation on this, but you know, we ought to look at science. We should not allow discrimination. We need to start a movement of common sense. And we need to be allowed to have that discussion instead of being canceled by the woke culture, which has taken over our universities, our elementary schools, and our corporate suites.
Yes or no question? Do you regret signing that bill?
No. It was passed in a bipartisan way. Democrats and Republicans voted for it. In fact, the State Chamber of Commerce supported it.
Congressman Walker, Representative Madison Cawthorn has endorsed you.
Sure.
He and some others in the party have said Democrats are the enemy and they're trying to destroy the country. Do you agree with that rhetoric?
No, look, if you look at my approach, even though I'm the highest rated conservative to ever serve in the top 4, my approach leads with, I believe, a statesman quality. That's the reason that I'm the only elected Republican in North Carolina. Even though I've checked all the conservative boxes, the reason that the approach matters, I'm the only one to be offered to give the commencement address at one of our HBCUs. In fact, I led on the Future Act there. I'm also the only Republican in the entire state to win the United Negro College President's Award. I'm very proud of those things because I don't believe in the rhetoric that's just blown out. Republicans have gotten to a place where it's important to blow things up. What I made my staff answer every 2 weeks when I was in Washington, D.C. for the entire 6 years was this question. Did we make an argument or did we make a difference? See, sometimes it's important to make the argument, but if all you look back in life, if the only thing that you've ever done is call people names, whatever level it is, and you've never made a difference in life, I think you've never really accomplished what God put the calling on your life to do so. So when it comes to that kind of rhetoric, no, I don't buy into it. I've never used it.
Okay.
Look, I'm not saying I've got it all right every time, but my heart and my mindset and the way that I've led in North Carolina, people know it. That's why I'm leading in Central North Carolina.
Let's get to this potentially final question for you, Congressman Walker. You can begin this. Some expect the Supreme Court may overturn Roe v. Wade, which protects a woman's right to have an abortion. And some states have recently introduced significant abortion restrictions. Where do you stand on further restrictions to abortion, and what role should Congress play, if any?
Well, I kind of take offense at the question when you call it restrictions. Those restrictions are also on the baby that would like to be born. Those are restrictions in my book. The darkest night that I ever remember on the United States House floor, went late into the night, about 11 o'clock. We were battling back and forth on this piece of legislation that we had offered. Should a baby be allowed to live if it somehow miraculously survives a botched abortion? At the end of the night, only 3 Democrats voted that that baby should be allowed to live. You talk about restrictions. I will fight to my dying day to protect life at all ages and stages. That night I went back to my office. It was almost midnight. I took out 3 thank you cards and I wrote 3 thank you cards for those 3 members that have the courage to do so. I knew what would happen. All 3 were primaried by AOC and gang. 2 were taken out, and only one, my friend Henry Cuellar from San Antonio, Texas, is the only one that survived. I will always stand 100% pro-life, and I will never compromise when it comes to it.
Governor McCrory.
Well, as governor, I made a tough decision. Actually, it wasn't tough. I had to shut down 3 abortion clinics in North Carolina, not for restriction, but because the abortion clinics were harming women by their incredible lax safety standards. And we initiated new safety standards. I mean, they weren't even cleaning their equipment or mopping the floor in between abortions. And me and my team shut it down. But we'll see what the Supreme Court has to say, but it ought to be left up to the states, not the federal government. And I firmly believe, in fact, if anything, in a lot of areas, we have politicians, including Ted Budd, whose only experience is Washington, D.C. And part of Washington's problem in many, many issues is they don't let the states and local government make the decisions. And I'm a conservative. I'm a Reagan conservative who believes the closer the decision is to the people, the better the decision is for our great republic we call the United States of America.
Governor, Congressman, thank you so much for your time this evening for this candid and civil discussion. There are still a lot of undecided voters in North Carolina. Perhaps you at home are just tuning into this election. So now is the candidate's chance to speak directly to voters about why they deserve their vote. Each candidate has 1 minute for a closing statement, and we'll begin with Governor Pat McCrory.
As Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Chuck Schumer assault the American dream, I have a record of lowering taxes, of creating energy independence for the state of North Carolina and our nation, of turning deficits into surpluses, of calling the National Guard when Antifa and anarchists try to destroy one of our cities. I made the tough decisions. I fought for the values of the people of North Carolina. I was more worried about the next generation than the next election when I was both mayor, a city councilman, and governor. Isn't it time we have people in Washington, D.C. that are more worried about the next generation than the next election? That's why I'm running for the U.S. Senate. We need to save the American dream. I'm a Ronald Reagan conservative who believes in character and accomplishments and results. And that's why I'm running for the Senate. And thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tillett. It's an honor to be here. Look, America lost its way when we turned our back on the Bible and got away from the Constitution. Look, I'm not saying that America got it all right day one when we launched out in this wonderful country, but America is exceptional because we never quit trying until we became the land of opportunity for every American. That's what's great about America. And listen, I'm willing to stand up and fight. I'm going to take on China, the amount of cyber attacking that they do every single day. I'm going to make sure that we finish the wall and we protect that southern border like we've never done, to be the sovereign nation, to continue to be the exceptional nation. And ladies and gentlemen, we've got to dig out the education which has been indoctrinating our children for more than 3 or 4 decades now. I will stand and fight. Look, I'm a blessed man. I'm a modest man. I don't come from millions of dollars, and I don't have a single dollar of D.C. dark money supporting me. But you know what I'll do? I'll continue to stand and fight for my family, for my wife, and the people in the future of this great country.
Thank you, Congressman Walker. And that's all that we have tonight. I want to thank both, again, Governor McCrory and Congressman Walker for joining us. Again, Congressman Ted Budd wasn't invited. He was invited, but he did not accept. And a reminder, early voting starts April 28th. The primary election day is May 17th. Write those dates down and have a great night.